Hello, I'm Hope Logan. I am an actor on Bold and the Beautiful, and many people really love both me and our Bold and the Beautiful drama. So I've come here to share updates about my beloved Bold and the Beautiful. Everyone, please subscribe and support me. If you do, I will keep coming every day with new updates for you. The week ahead in the Bold and the Beautiful unfolds like a storm quietly gathering on the horizon, where one life-changing decision begins to send shockwaves through every corner of Los Angeles's fashion world. At the center of it all is Hope Logan Spencer, who stands on the edge of a major turning point as she moves closer to officially resigning from Forrester Creations. The more frustration builds around her hope for the future line and the constant tension surrounding her position, the more irresistible the idea becomes of starting fresh at Logan. It's not just a career shift, it feels like a breaking point, a moment where loyalty, identity, and ambition collide. Liam Spencer watches this unfolding change with quiet confidence, believing deeply that Hope will ultimately choose Logan. And for once, it seems like he may actually get what he's been hoping for. Meanwhile, Katie Logan sees opportunity in the chaos, convinced that bringing Hope into their fashion house could be the spark Logan needs to rise even higher, even as others around her sense danger in the move. But not everyone sees this as a fresh start. Donna Logan Forrester soon voices a warning filled with concern, sensing that Katie's determination may be pushing the family towards something unstable and irreversible. She fears that if Katie continues down this path, there may be nothing left of their fragile family ties to repair. Still, Katie refuses to back down, believing that Brooke Logan Forrester should be more supportive rather than hesitant about Hope's future. As tensions quietly build beneath the surface, it becomes clear that this is no longer just about business. It's about loyalty, family, and the emotional fractures that keep widening with every decision. And when the truth finally breaks free, the Forresters are stunned to learn that Hope is officially walking away from Forrester Creations to join Logan. The reaction is immediate and sharp, especially from Steffy Forrester Finnegan and Ridge Forrester, who see this move not as ambition, but betrayal, branding Hope as someone who has turned her back on everything they built together. The emotional fallout spreads quickly through the families, leaving no one untouched. Brooke, despite her unconditional love for her daughter, finds herself torn between pride and doubt, questioning whether Hope has made the right decision and quietly placing blame on Katie for fueling another family crisis. Even Liam, who believed he was supporting Hope's growth, begins to feel the weight of potential backlash as accusations rise that he may have influenced her decision from the shadows. What once felt like a hopeful new beginning now turns into a tangled web of suspicion and resentment, where every alliance is tested and every relationship strained. At the same time, another, quieter but equally dangerous storyline begins to unfold when Melissa Dillon steps into risky territory, choosing to move forward with Remy Price's request despite the uncertainty and consequences that loom over her. Her decision is not taken lightly, especially knowing Remy's troubled past tied to his deepfake mistakes. Yet she still chooses to believe in his effort to change. As pressure builds, Dillon takes a bold step by approaching Deke Sharp, vouching for Remy in a moment that could either redeem him or destroy trust completely. She carefully explains his attempt to move beyond his past errors, hoping Deke will see the person Remy is trying to become rather than the mistakes he made before. At the same time, Dillon makes a quiet but urgent request. She asks Deke to keep her involvement with Remy a secret, fully aware that if Electra Forrester ever discovers the truth, their friendship could be shattered beyond repair. Every choice she makes feels like walking a tightrope over a deepening divide, where one misstep could cost her everything. And as these hidden risks grow, the Forrester family is already preparing something far more explosive on their end. Steffy and the rest of the Forrester clan begin plotting their response, driven by anger and a sense of betrayal over Hope's decision to leave. What starts as emotional hurt slowly transforms into something more calculated, as Steffi considers ways to sabotage Hope's new beginning at Logan before it even has a chance to take shape. The fallout doesn't stay contained, pulling in Katie and Bill Spencer as well, who find themselves increasingly affected by the rising feud between the families. Beneath all of this tension, whispers of contract issues begin to surface, hinting that Hope may soon face troubling professional setbacks that could threaten everything she is trying to build. And as rivalries deepen and loyalties fracture, it becomes clear that this is only the beginning of a much larger storm, one where every decision carries consequences, and no one walks away untouched. As the tension tightens across Los Angeles, the consequences of Hope's decision begin to spread far beyond what anyone initially expected, like ripples turning into waves that crash against every relationship in sight. What once felt like a simple career move is now evolving into a full-scale emotional and corporate war, where every conversation carries hidden weight and every silence feels like a warning. At Forrester Creations, Steffi's frustration hardens into determination, and she begins pushing the idea that Hope's departure cannot go unanswered. In her mind, this isn't just about losing an employee. It's about protecting the legacy of the Forrester name from what she sees as betrayal. Ridge, though more measured, cannot ignore the sting of what feels like a personal rejection, and even his patience begins to thin as he weighs what this means for the company's future stability. The atmosphere inside Forrester Creations shifts noticeably, becoming colder, sharper, and more strategic, as if every meeting is now secretly a battlefield. Meanwhile, at Logan, the excitement that Katie once envisioned begins to mix with unease as reality sets in. Bringing Hope into their fashion house is no longer just an opportunity. It is a declaration of war against the Forresters. Katie, though still convinced of her decision, starts sensing the pressure building from every direction, especially as Donna's earlier warnings echo more clearly in her mind. Bill Spencer watches the situation with his usual intensity, already anticipating the ripple effects this could have not just on business, but on the fragile balance between two powerful families. Even Liam, despite his initial optimism, starts to feel the weight of unintended consequences, realizing that what he hoped would be a fresh beginning for Hope might instead ignite something far more destructive. The excitement of change slowly gives way to the realization that no one will escape the fallout untouched. At the same time, Hope herself finds the emotional toll of her decision heavier than expected, even as she prepares to step into a new chapter. Leaving Forrester Creations is not just a professional shift. It carries the emotional imprint of everything she built there, everything she fought for, and everything she is now leaving behind. There are moments where doubt creeps in quietly, especially as she senses the rising tension between the two families she is now caught between. Liam's reassurance helps, but even he cannot shield her from the growing storm forming in the background. Every step forward feels like it is being watched, judged, and measured, as if the entire fashion world is waiting to see whether her leap of faith will turn into triumph or collapse. Elsewhere, Steffi's plan to respond begins to take a more defined shape, and her approach becomes increasingly strategic rather than purely emotional. She starts considering ways to undermine the stability of Hope's new position at Logan before it can fully solidify, believing that weakening the foundation early could prevent long-term consequences for Forrester Creations. Her conversations with Ridge reflect a growing alignment of concern, even if their motivations are not always identical. What unites them is the shared belief that Hope's departure cannot simply be accepted without response. As these plans begin to form, the tension between both fashion houses transforms into something more calculated and dangerous, where every move is watched and every opportunity for advantage is quietly pursued. Meanwhile, Dylan's situation grows even more precarious as she continues walking a thin line between loyalty and secrecy. Her decision to vouch for Remy Price weighs heavily on her, especially as she becomes more aware of how fragile trust can be in this interconnected world. Speaking to Deke Sharp is not just about defending Remy. It is about protecting a truth she cannot yet fully reveal. Asking Deke to keep her connection to Remy hidden from Electra Forrester adds another layer of emotional strain, knowing that if the truth surfaces, it could permanently damage relationships that still have not fully healed. Every interaction feels like it carries invisible consequences, and Dylan begins to understand that even well-intentioned choices can lead to unintended damage when secrets are involved. As these parallel storylines deepen, the emotional intensity across both families continues to rise, with no clear path toward resolution in sight. At Forrester, the sense of betrayal turns into quiet retaliation, while at Logan, ambition is shadowed by growing unease and uncertainty. Hope stands at the center of it all, unknowingly becoming the focal point of a brewing storm that is no longer just about fashion, but about pride, legacy, and control. And just when it seems the situation cannot become more unstable, whispers of contract complications begin to surface again, hinting that Hope's future may not be as secure as she hoped. What was meant to be a bold new beginning now feels like the opening chapter of an escalating conflict, one that promises deeper betrayals, sharper rivalries, and consequences that will reshape everything once the dust finally settles. As the pressure escalates, the first real cracks begin to show in Hope's new direction, and what once felt like a clean transition starts turning into something far more complicated. Behind closed doors, subtle conversations about contracts, exclusivity clauses, and creative ownership begin surfacing, suggesting that Hope's move to Logan may not be as smooth or secure as everyone assumed. These legal and professional uncertainties hang over her like an invisible shadow, slowly turning excitement into anxiety. Katie tries to stay confident in her decision, but even she cannot ignore how quickly the situation is becoming tangled in corporate resistance and emotional backlash. Bill observes it all with a calculating calm, already recognizing that instability between the two fashion houses could create leverage for someone willing to use it. And as doubts spread quietly, Hope finds herself questioning not her talent or ambition, but whether she has just stepped into a battle far bigger than she intended. At the same time, Steffy's response begins to take on a sharper edge, no longer just emotional, but increasingly strategic in execution. She starts identifying pressure points within Logan's structure, quietly considering how instability around Hope's transition could be used to weaken the entire launch before it gains momentum. What drives her is not only rivalry, but a deep conviction that Forrester Creations must not appear vulnerable after losing one of its key figures. Ridge, while still cautious, finds himself drawn into the logic of protecting the family legacy, even as he struggles with the personal, emotional fallout behind it. The line between business protection and personal retaliation begins to blur, and what emerges is a silent, unfolding conflict that neither side fully controls anymore. Every decision now feels like it carries double meaning, what is said publicly and what is intended privately. Meanwhile, Dylan's situation grows even more fragile as her web of secrecy becomes harder to maintain. Her continued involvement with Remy Price places her in increasingly risky territory, especially as she tries to balance honesty with protection. Deke Sharp's awareness adds another layer of tension, because even if he agrees to remain silent, trust is now something that feels conditional and unstable. Dylan senses that one unexpected revelation could collapse everything she is trying to carefully hold together, particularly her connection to Electra Forrester. The emotional strain of maintaining silence begins to weigh heavily on her, turning every interaction into a careful calculation of what can and cannot be revealed. What started as an attempt to help someone redeem themselves is slowly becoming a dangerous balancing act between truth, loyalty, and consequence. And as all these threads tighten, the world around both Forrester and Logan begins to feel like it is moving toward an unavoidable collision. Hope stands unknowingly at the center of it all, while both families circle around her decision like opposing forces preparing for impact. The excitement of new beginnings is now fully shadowed by rivalry, suspicion, and strategic maneuvering on all sides. No one is simply reacting anymore. They are positioning, planning, and anticipating the next move in a conflict that continues to grow beneath the surface. And as the week pushes forward, it becomes increasingly clear that what began as a single resignation is now transforming into a chain reaction that could permanently redefine alliances, break fragile bonds, and reshape the future of both fashion dynasties. As the emotional and corporate tension continues to mount, the atmosphere across Los Angeles becomes heavier, almost suffocating with anticipation, as if everyone can sense that something irreversible is approaching. At Forrester Creations, Steffi's determination sharpens into something far more focused, and her earlier frustrations evolve into deliberate action. The idea of Hope leaving is no longer treated as a simple disappointment. It is now framed internally as a threat that must be answered. Subtle conversations begin shifting toward control, influence, and positioning, as Steffi quietly explores ways to weaken Hope's foundation at Logan before it can fully take shape. Even Ridge, despite his more restrained nature, cannot ignore the growing pressure to protect the Forrester legacy from what feels like a direct challenge. The emotional wound of Hope's departure slowly transforms into strategic thinking, and the line between personal hurt and business warfare becomes increasingly difficult to distinguish. On the Logan side, the excitement Katie once envisioned begins to feel more like standing at the edge of a storm rather than stepping into opportunity. Bringing Hope into their fashion house has already stirred attention, but now it also draws scrutiny, tension, and the looming presence of retaliation from the Forresters. Katie tries to maintain confidence, pushing forward with belief in what this collaboration could become. But even she cannot ignore the mounting resistance forming around them. Bill's presence adds another layer of unpredictability as he watches the situation with a quiet, calculating awareness of how quickly alliances and rivalries can shift in his world. Liam, too, begins to feel the emotional weight of what he helped set in motion, realizing that Hope's new beginning is already being surrounded by conflict that could affect far more than just her career. What once felt like a hopeful transition now feels like standing on unstable ground, where every step forward risks triggering a larger fallout. Hope herself finds the emotional reality of her decision growing more complex with each passing moment. Leaving Forrester Creations was meant to be empowering, a step toward independence and renewal, but the aftermath surrounding it is anything but simple. She begins to feel the pressure of being placed at the center of a growing conflict between two powerful families, each interpreting her decision through the lens of loyalty and betrayal. The excitement of joining Logan is still there, but it is now layered with uncertainty about what this move will ultimately cost her. Every conversation, every glance, and every quiet reaction around her seems charged with meaning, as if she is constantly being evaluated not just as a designer, but as a symbol of something much larger. And even as she tries to focus on the future, the emotional pull of what she left behind refuses to fully fade. Elsewhere, Dylan's situation becomes increasingly delicate as the weight of her secrecy deepens. Her involvement in Remy Price's request forces her to navigate a narrow emotional path, where trust and risk are constantly colliding. Speaking with Deke Sharp continues to be a critical point of tension, especially as she tries to ensure Remy's efforts to move past his deepfake mistakes are seen in a fair light. But the request to keep her connection to Remy hidden from Electra Forrester adds a painful layer of anxiety, knowing how devastating the truth could be if it ever surfaced. Every decision she makes feels like it carries consequences she cannot fully control, and the emotional burden of protecting multiple people at once begins to weigh heavily on her. What started as an attempt to help someone redeem themselves now feels like standing in the middle of a fragile structure that could collapse with a single revelation. As all of these tensions continue to build in parallel, the sense of inevitability grows stronger, as if every storyline is slowly moving toward a single point of impact. Steffi's quiet strategy against Hope, Katie's risky optimism at Logan, Dylan's dangerous secrecy, and Hope's uncertain transition all begin to intertwine in ways that feel increasingly unstable. The contracts surrounding Hope's move remain a lingering concern, hinting that even her professional foundation may not be as secure as she believed when she made her choice. And with every passing moment, the emotional temperature rises, loyalties are tested, alliances are questioned, and hidden intentions begin to surface beneath carefully maintained calm. It becomes clear that this is no longer just a shift in fashion houses or career paths, but the beginning of a much deeper and more personal conflict that is steadily tightening its grip on everyone involved.